There are changes you've thought about making 100 times, but the moment you imagine the disappointment in someone's eyes, a parent, a partner, a friend, you pause. Maybe you've built your whole life around keeping the peace, smoothing things over, making sure no one ever has to feel let down because of you. You're good at it. You know what to say, how to act, how to hide the parts of yourself that might rock the boat. On the outside, you're easy to be around, always there for everyone, always saying yes. But every night, when it's finally quiet, you wonder, is this really my life or just a version of me built for everyone else? The truth is, it's not failure you fear. It's not the unknown or even loss. It's that sinking feeling of letting someone you love down. It's the quiet ache of watching their face fall or feeling their expectations drift a little further away. So you stay the same. You keep things steady. The world around you stays calm, but inside, there's a slow burning unease that never quite goes away. You tell yourself you're being kind, you're making sacrifices, you're doing what's best for everyone, but there's a cost. The more you hold back, the more you dilute the real you. Over time, the person you're protecting is no longer just yourself. It's the mask you wear, the role you play, the peace you keep for others at the expense of your own truth. At some point, the choice to never let anyone down becomes a prison. The harder you try to be everything for everyone, the more invisible you become to yourself. And in the end, all that peace you protected for everyone else leaves you with a quiet question. When will it finally be your turn to live honestly? Sometimes the most expensive thing you ever pay for is the chance to keep everyone else happy. Maybe you know that feeling. Standing at the edge of something new, something you want, but pulling back at the last second because you picture the disappointment on someone else's face. It's rarely the risk itself that holds you back. It's the fear of letting down the people whose approval once meant the world. It could be your parents, always hoping you'll make the right choice. Or a partner who wants things to stay exactly as they are. Or colleagues, friends, a whole network of expectations you didn't even realize you were carrying on your shoulders. You tell yourself it's not worth the trouble. Why rock the boat? Why be the source of anyone's discomfort? So you stay put. You watch new opportunities drift by, a job in a new city, a fresh relationship, a different way of living, and you turn them down quietly, telling yourself you're being practical, loyal, or wise. But if you listen close, there's a quieter voice beneath all those justifications. It asks, who are you living for, really? Sometimes, keeping the peace is just another way of hiding. You become an expert in saying yes to plans you don't care about, agreeing with opinions you no longer believe, laughing at jokes that never felt right. Your days fill up with obligations, but inside you feel emptier with every sure, every of course. It's safe maybe, but there's a cost. Every time you make yourself smaller, you're building another brick in a wall between you and the person you might become. Imagine it like this. Each time you swallow your truth, you add a new brick to the wall. At first, it's barely noticeable. You convince yourself it's just maturity, patience, respect for others. But year after year, the wall grows higher, thicker. You wake up one morning and realize you can barely hear your own voice through the barrier you've built to protect everyone else's comfort. And you wonder, when did I become a stranger in my own life? Take the story of Emily, who's worked at the same job for a decade. She doesn't hate it, but every morning when she wakes up, there's a numbness that lingers long after the alarm stops ringing. Her parents are proud. You have security, you have benefits, and that pride has always been enough to keep her in place. But lately, every project she finishes feels like a goodbye to another small piece of herself. It's not that she can't imagine something different. It's that she can't bear the thought of calling her parents to say, I'm leaving. And so she stays day after day, exchanging the possibility of her own growth for the comfort of everyone else. That's the real price of always being agreeable. You disappear behind your own good intentions. The world might praise your reliability, your kindness, your sacrifice, but deep down, you begin to sense the loneliness of a life lived entirely for other people's peace of mind. Ironically, the more you try to never let anyone down, the less anyone can truly see who you are. You move through crowded rooms, family dinners, happy hours with friends, and still feel the weight of not belonging. Not because you don't fit, but because you never let yourself show up honestly in the first place. When was the last time you did something just for you? Without scanning the faces of everyone around you, measuring their reaction, checking for disappointment? How much of your life has become a performance? A role you agreed to play so long ago that you can't remember what the original script even said? Maybe you've tried to change by switching the scenery, new job, new home, new social circle. But if you're still living by the same rules, if you're still making every decision to keep the peace, the sense of being stuck comes back every time, just in new clothes. You might wake up in a different bed, drive a different route, but find the same emptiness waiting for you at the end of the day. Real change doesn't happen when you swap one cage for another. It happens when you finally decide to break your own lock. Here's the truth most people avoid. Sometimes, growing up means letting people down. Not out of spite, not because you've stopped caring, but because the only way to step into your own life is to leave behind the parts of you that only existed for someone else's comfort. It's never easy. The first time you say no to an invitation, the first time you turn down a request, the first time you choose what feels right over what feels expected, it stings. There may be confusion, disappointment, even anger. But underneath it all, there's something else. A sense of relief. A breath of air you haven't tasted in years. Think of it as shedding an old layer of skin or slipping off a jacket that's grown too tight. It's uncomfortable, yes. Someone might even wish you'd put it back on, that you'd stay the same for just a little longer. But growth is almost always uncomfortable. And in the end, wearing an old jacket just to keep everyone else happy only means you're never warm yourself. True change often starts with the smallest rebellion, the first honest no, the first moment you choose your own preference, even if no one else understands, the first time you let yourself outgrow the version of you that was built for approval and begin living for the version that was built for truth. What if, this time, you gave yourself permission to disappoint someone, just once, just for you? What if you trusted that the world wouldn't fall apart? That the people who truly love you will adapt? That your own peace is worth a little discomfort? Because the real tragedy isn't in letting someone down. It's in never showing up as who you truly are. You don't have to burn bridges or walk away from everyone you love, but you do have to loosen your grip on the need to be everyone's source of comfort. You do have to risk being misunderstood for the chance to be real. Only then do you get to step into a life that belongs to you. Messy, unpredictable, honest. That's the only kind of peace that lasts. There's a moment, maybe late at night or in a quiet afternoon, when you realize how much energy you've spent choreographing your life around other people's comfort. It's not dramatic. No one is shouting, no doors are slamming. It's just the soft, heavy feeling that comes from living a day exactly the way others hoped, and yet still lying awake, wondering why you feel so far from yourself. Sometimes, choosing yourself looks like nothing on the outside. You don't make a speech or draw a line in the sand. Maybe it's as simple as ignoring your phone for an hour when a friend expects an instant reply. Maybe it's gently declining plans you don't want, or buying groceries for the meals you actually crave. These aren't grand rebellions. They're small fractures in the old pattern, the tiny acts of self-respect that build up day by day into a new kind of freedom. But here's what no one tells you. Sometimes freedom feels boring at first. The first night you don't explain yourself, you might feel anxious, even guilty. You might wonder if you're selfish or if you're pushing people away. There's a strange silent grief in letting go of the person everyone counted on. You're not losing friends, but you are losing a familiar sense of importance. A role you played so well you forgot it was a role. Think about Olivia, who used to say yes to every weekend invitation. She was the planner, the listener, the one who always made sure nobody ever felt left out. But she never let herself cancel, even when she was exhausted. One month, she decided to try something new. She started saying, "Not tonight." At first, her friends were confused. Some stopped calling as much. There were nights when her phone was quiet and her apartment felt empty. But there was also a new kind of relief. Space to sleep in, to rediscover her hobbies, to ask herself what she actually wanted from a Saturday night. It was lonelier for a while, but it was real. Here's the twist. When you stop holding everyone else's world together, some things will fall apart, but you will finally see what's strong enough to remain. Some relationships change, some drift away. But what stays will be rooted in truth, not performance. What grows back is smaller at first, but it's yours. Real growth isn't always about becoming bolder or louder. Sometimes it's about finally feeling okay with being ordinary in someone else's eyes. It's about not needing to be the one who fixes, who manages, who smooths everything over. It's learning that your value doesn't come from how many people need you, but from how honestly you're living with yourself. Imagine sitting by an open window, winter air drifting in. It's not warm, but it's fresh. That discomfort, the chill, the pause, the space, means you're no longer recycling the same old air. Every time you resist the urge to apologize for being unavailable, every time you choose what restores you over what exhausts you, you're opening the window wider. There's a myth that being true to yourself will make you lonely forever, but the reality is subtler. It makes you available for connection that's real, not transactional. You stop filling the emptiness with noise. You learn to let silence stay, and in that space, you start to notice a new kind of belonging. Not because you made everyone happy, but because you finally let yourself breathe. Ask yourself this honestly, not as a challenge, but as an invitation. What small habit could you change this week, even if it disappoints someone? Not a revolution, just one decision that's yours alone. That's where real change begins. Not in one dramatic gesture, but in the quiet, consistent return to your own side. You won't lose everyone, and you won't lose yourself. In fact, you might find out you were never lost at all. You were just waiting for permission to come home to yourself, one honest decision at a time. Real maturity isn't always about big leaps or public victories. Sometimes it's simply about quietly taking responsibility for your own choices, even if those choices mean someone else is let down, as long as you're not letting yourself down. There's a strange kind of courage in that. It's not the kind that gets applause, but it's the kind that builds a life you can actually live with. When you finally stop apologizing for needing something different or for wanting to grow, you begin to hear the voice inside you more clearly. A voice that isn't interested in keeping up appearances, only in being honest. The truth is, there will always be some discomfort when you decide to live for yourself. It might show up as an awkward conversation, an uneasy silence, or the subtle feeling of stepping outside your usual script. But every time you make a choice that's truly yours, even if it's small, you are making space for a new kind of peace, one that isn't dependent on anyone else's approval. This new path isn't always easy. You'll have moments of doubt. There will be times you wonder if it would be simpler to slip back into old habits, to keep saying yes, to keep smoothing things over. But if you listen closely, you'll notice something shift. The anxiety of disappointing others starts to feel lighter than the burden of constantly disappointing yourself. That's when you realize growing up isn't about perfect confidence, but about imperfect courage. No one teaches you that sometimes the first step toward a more honest life is allowing someone else to be a little disappointed and letting that be okay. It doesn't make you selfish. It means you're finally learning to take care of the person who's been with you all along, yourself. If you've ever lived just to keep the peace, if you've ever lost sight of your own wants while trying to meet everyone else's expectations, just comment the word brave below this video. Not for anyone else, just as a quiet reminder that you deserve to be real, even if it shakes things up. Sometimes a single word is enough to remind yourself you're worth the risk.